phone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name, making a comment, or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist you with any questions you may have. If you parked in the garage, a parking validation stamp is available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available. We'll now begin the meeting with a roll call of members.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Regional Council. When I call your name, please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor Beck. Vice Mayor Mark Stanton is proxy for Mayor B.N. Wilner.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Crane. Ms. Daniels.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Gallego.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Galvin. Mayor Giles. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall. Mayor Hartke.
Present.
Thank you. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Governor Roe Lewis. Mr. Meck.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Molina. Mayor Morris.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. President Patia.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira. Mayor Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Excuse me, was that Mayor Pereira?
Yes,
Thank
it was.
you. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schoaf.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Sykes.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss. Mayor Weiss. Mayor Wheatley. Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. Mayor Weiss. Is there anyone that I missed? Madam Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you so much. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States.
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item is call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. We will begin with Diane Barker.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kate Gallego and Mag Mears. I am excited, and why? I just woke up and I thought, I got to wear that red, white, and blue dress because in a week we are going to have the Declaration of Independence. And what is that? That was basically in 1776, the passage of the Declaration by the Continental Congress after the Revolutionary War, the separation of Great Britain and George Washington, and he and Lafayette came to my hometown. Now, I'm thinking, my mother had told me this, don't you know, Diane, that we come from revolutionaries, because she saw some of my ideas and like that, and I grew up in Marietta, Ohio, which is the first settlement that is past the 13 colonies, the oldest city in Ohio. And, as I go along, I respect and appreciate where I did grow up more. It was a small town, and I always wanted to go big. Every place I went, and I went to Ohio State, I couldn't wait to get out, to go to New York City, Chicago, Miami, and so forth. And, I learned transportation outside of an automobile in Chicago because it was very windy And you had to park far from where I worked at Marshall Fields. And so I started using express buses that got me right downtown. And so I'm saying multimodal, it feels good. We've got transportation. MAG has planned for future even more different choices. And that's the way I look at transportation. I typically get, because I came from the automobile, single automobile, that the car is making me independent and everything. Well, is it when you're stuck in traffic? And so I found some choices. And so I wanted to say, you know, with a couple of dollars, you know, you can get a ride even on an express bus that I'll put up against your car during rush hour traffic. And so then I just finally like to say, in regards to the Declaration of Independence, is that I have found that being an American woman, we still have emerging values. I'm getting the First Amendment freedom of speech here to share some of my experiences, and the fact that, you know, just look at what your life is and maybe try something different than your own habit. So happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. I suppose that tees into that Mayor Hartke and Mayor Osborne will be in charge of anything MAG does for the 250th for the United States. So can start planning now. I don't.
I'm delegating to Eric.
All right, Mayor Hartke has delegated to Eric. No doubt the people of our region are counting on MAG to lead the 250th celebration. MAG provides opportunity for public comment to submit written comments. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with committee members. Number 4, informational items. There are no informational items on today's agenda. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5L are on the consent agenda. I will turn to Paradise Valley Vice Mayor Mark Stanton for a few words.
Thank you, Chair Gallego, very much. I wanted to share that on June 13th, the Paradise Valley Town Council unanimously approved $200,000 to be allocated for emergency shelter services. And we're so very proud to be part of the effort to combat such an important threat and work towards solutions. So Chair Gallego, we just wanted to say thank you, and we're looking forward to MAG distributing those funds. On behalf of the entire council, we appreciate being part of the solution. I yield.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vice Mayor, on behalf of a city that has benefited from those funds in the past. Thank you. And we in Phoenix just appreciate everyone who is stepping up. Evictions are happening throughout our county, and we all need to do more if we want to get people housed. I will also ask our executive director to do a brief explanation of item 5K to explain a slight change.
Thank you, Chair Gallego, members of the council. Item 5K has changed slightly from the approval at Management Committee and TPC. These are complicated funds that have very specific federal guidelines to them. And as the quality control was going on through this process, our staff discovered that we hadn't allocated quite properly in the Avondale, West Phoenix 5310 transportation for seniors and disabled. So I'm going to ask Patrick Stone if he'll just come up real briefly, tell you what the change is. We don't think it is significantly material, but we just wanted, in the interest of transparency, to explain the difference between last week and this week. Patrick?
Thank you, Ed. Madam Chair, members of Regional Council, quickly just to explain, and Ed really has highlighted the issue, there are specific federal requirements associated with 5310 funding. And specifically, the requirement is you must at least spend 55% on capital. As Ed said, when we did the quality control review, we determined that the vehicle amount would have done 2.3 vehicles. You cannot buy a third of a vehicle, so we did factor in and round it up to 3 whole vehicles so that we had that correct. The region did figure out a way to solve that funding shortfall such that all applicants that were identified for the Management Committee item would be made whole and kept whole. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
So the bottom line is everyone who was notified that they would receive funding will receive that funding. In addition, one agency will get an entire 3 vehicles when they were only expecting 2.
Excellent. Some
It's
good
a net
news.
positive.
Any questions for Patrick, Ed, or generally? All right, then do we have a motion? Motion from Mayor Osborne and a second from Mayor Hartke. If you are participating online, please turn on your camera and leave it on. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed say nay. Can we get a roll call of those with cameras off?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I call your name, please indicate how you vote. Mayor Hall. Mayor Hall, how do you vote? Madam Chair, all other cameras are on and the motion passes.
Wonderful, thank you. We next go to item 6, which is an update on Read On Arizona and our partnership at MAG. This is for information and discussion. Peter Burnett, Interim Regional Analytics Director, will introduce the item.
Let me start over. Thank you, Chair Gallego and members of the Regional Council. MAG and Read On Arizona have been working together since 2014. We are pleased to have Lori Masur with us from Read On Arizona today to present information about Read On Arizona, the work they are doing, as well as the collaboration with MAG and other communities. Lori Masur is the Director of Early Learning and guides Read On Arizona's collaborative work on several strategic priorities related to improving school readiness, early literacy, and systems building efforts in our state. With that, I'll turn the time over to Lori. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Lori Masur, as Peter stated, and I'm excited to share the work over the last 10 years that Read On has done in partnership with the Maricopa Association of Governments. To give you guys a little background, if you're not quite sure what Read On Arizona is our state's early literacy collective impact model initiative that has a very strategic focus on school readiness and early literacy. We often say that it takes 8 years to build a reader. So we want to make sure that we're paying close and careful attention to what happens in that birth to 5 space, as well as what happens in that K to 3 space. But how this partnership really began with MAG happened around 2014. So at that time, partners in Read On Arizona knew that if we were going to move the needle on what was being described at that time as Arizona's early literacy crisis, that we had to be very intentional and we had to be very purposeful. And that involved a very data-driven approach. And so partners came together. And at the time, those partners included First Things First. It included the Arizona Department of Education. It included a few of our philanthropic partners and other statewide agencies. And those partners came together and began to identify indicators that we knew were impacting school readiness, and we knew that was impacting 3rd grade literacy. And as a result of that, we came together with health data, with education data, where were libraries located, where were medical institutions located. And we had all of this raw data, and we said, great. Now, what do we do with all of these Excel spreadsheets and all of this raw data? And at the time, Terry Clark, who was the state's literacy director, someone came to her and said, have you had an opportunity to go to a training at MAG that has the tools and the data visualization tools available to make this information digestible to partners so that they can take this information and leverage it and move forward in their work? And so Terry attended one of those trainings, and afterward, she stayed afterward and she approached Anubhav Bagley and she said, this is awesome. This is great. Have you ever thought of taking education data and infusing it with these mapping at this population level? And Anubhav said, no, but there's nothing that prohibits us from doing so. And as a result of that, the partnership between Read On Arizona and MAG began. And as you can see, MAG is one of our partners on our advisory board, because really one of our core functions is around data integration and analysis, how we lean into and leverage data in order to move our work forward at both the state level and at the local level, community by community. And so when we talk about the work of our shared partners, we really identified four shared priorities. And so that first shared priority is, how do we build educator capacity across that birth through third grade continuum in the science of reading, or what we refer to as what is just effective literacy instruction that's grounded in science? And then how do we identify what we know works and intentionally scale those practices up? And because we know it doesn't take any one entity to move the needle on early literacy, how are we engaging families and community partners to support that work? And then because we know that the birth to 5 years are so critically important, how do we expand access to high quality early learning in our state? And if we bring all of those things together, our goal is that by 2030, that at least 72% of our third graders in the state will be reading on grade level. And so we talk about Read On Arizona as a statewide entity in this umbrella on which we have a number of state partners that exist. But in addition to that, we know that work that happens at the local level has to be unique to fit the context of the geography and of the demographics of that area. And so we do have a network of over 20 Read On communities. And those communities that are in bold and have an asterisk next to them are those Read On communities that align to MAG member agencies. And within those local communities, you have a variety of stakeholders that are coming together. You have early childhood partners, you have school district leadership, you have municipality leadership, you have local libraries who are coming together, who are saying, how do we take those four shared priorities that we have at the state level, and how do we apply those four shared priorities to our local context to meet the needs of our families and our students in those communities? Oops. And when we think about the data and the data that we use and that we're leveraging at that local level, we have local communities using that to drive outcomes by, one, beginning to identify the services that are happening in a particular area, but also to begin to identify the gaps. We look across that data and we say, where are the communities that have a high need, but also have low resources? And how do we work collectively within our communities to drive resources to those particular demographics and communities? And then once we've begun to identify those services and gaps, how do we focus on improving those early literacy outcomes? We often say that we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So we need to get really targeted and really strategic and really intentional. And we use data to drive that work. And like I said earlier, it's not the job of any one particular entity to move the needle on early literacy. It's not the sole responsibility of the school. It's not the sole responsibility of families. It's not the sole responsibility of community partners. It's everyone coming together to say, what are our shared goals and what are our shared metrics and how we're going to move that needle forward? And how do we begin to break down some of those silos and really lean into those collaborative efforts and strengthen those collaborative efforts in order to move that work forward so we can define those local priorities? Are the local priorities that we're wanting to invest more in early childhood? Are we looking to strengthen what's happening in the K-1 literacy space? And then how do we identify implementation strategies as we move forward? And implementation strategies for whom, especially when we think about those targeted populations. So I know that we have some of our mayors here who are part of Read On communities. If you didn't see your name on the list, I would encourage you to reach out to myself. My email will be at the end of this to talk about how do you do a letter of intent, which is available on our website, about bringing those stakeholders together to do that community scan. What is your data showing you? How do you begin to identify those gaps and come together as partners to begin to think of how do we begin to fill those gaps within our community as it relates to school readiness and early literacy? So when we think about that data and we think about that meeting 10 years ago in 2014, that led to the first iteration of a tool that we refer to as Maplet. And Maplet really has been leveraged across the last 9 years at both the state level and at both local community level to drive change. And when we think about that, we talked about Maplet being this one key source for key data sets that we know are impacting early literacy. I often like to use the backpack analogy. Children come to school, their first day of school, whether it's preschool or whether it's kindergarten, they have their backpack and it's got their paper and it's their supplies and their crayons. But I often refer to the invisible backpack that children have with them. And oftentimes that invisible backpack is holding things like housing insecurity or issues that they're dealing with poverty. And we know that those are certain pieces that are impacting their ability to access the curriculum fully or to show up on a consistent basis to school. And all of that data comes into Maplet so that our Read On communities and state leaders can really drill down and begin to see what's happening in my neck of the woods, for lack of a better term, what's happening with my neighbor next door, so that I have an idea of where I need to focus our efforts and our energies. The great thing about the latest iteration of the tool, especially in terms of making that data more digestible, is that we have the ability not only to look at it from a mapping perspective, but as of January of 2023, we have the ability to do summary reports and also custom geographies with those summary reports. And it allows us to see those detailed reports of assessment data, enrollment data, your chronic absence data, looking at your assessment data relative to your poverty levels, and really begin to look at that from that statewide lens and get very focalized all the way down to the district level or the zip code level. And the beauty of the summary reports is it actually allows you to download a PDF version. So you have this tangible leave behind, or you're able to take these snippets, as we've seen a number of our communities do, and put that into some of their grant applications when they're seeking additional funding and resources. In addition, we have the tutorials, because often people will come and they're like, where do I begin? So how do we explore those maps? How do we use those filters? But in addition to the tutorials, there's real power in the user stories, where we have some of our community partners offering a testimonial into how they use the data housed within the tool in order to make programmatic decisions for their organization, or even from a systems perspective within their community, where they begin to decide where they're going to focus their efforts and their energies moving forward. I'd be remiss if I didn't say we often have school districts and leaders telling us, well, what was the key to success? I'm looking at this data. I see this trend data over time. I see that we have, schools or districts who are exceeding the statewide average. What's the secret to their success? And we use that data to then approach them and say, can you tell us what's contributed to these gains over time within your community? What's caused the uptick in the percentage of children passing the statewide assessment, but also we've seen a dramatic decline in the number of children that are minimally proficient. And through our case studies, we've captured that work. This is the most current one from Tucson, Arizona, but we also have Wildflower that has been spotlighted out of Goodyear. In addition, we have one coming up in the fall that's spotlighting Arizona Charter Academy in the Surprise area. So really sort of putting a story behind the data that's been captured. So when we think about this idea of driving with data, data integration and analysis, I would be remiss if I didn't mention sort of the success that's happened over the past decade through this partnership with Read On and MAG and what we've accomplished together. As a result of being very strategic and coordinated in our efforts, Arizona was one of only 6 states that saw statistically significant progress on the National Assessment of Educational Progress for 4th grade reading. I'll take a page out of my colleague Sean Ross's book from the Arizona State Board of Education. He says Arizona went from Arizona to Arizona in terms of the progress that's being made. To give you a little more perspective on that, when we started this work back in 2013, Arizona was 45th among all states on 4th grade reading. And as of 2022, we've moved from 45th to 28th in the nation in terms of 4th grade reading. And we've seen similar progress for economically disadvantaged students, moving from 45th to 27th in the nation. So we've made great progress. We're sitting right there at the national average, but that's all to say we have this momentum. We want to capitalize on this momentum. It's not time to let off the gas. It's actually time to hit the gas in terms of our efforts with 3rd and 4th grade reading in the state. I'll leave you with this. As a result of our collaborative efforts since 2020, we've been able to leverage a significant amount of external outside funding in the terms of $175 million by leveraging this data. And that is in terms of federal grant opportunities, state funding opportunities, and also relief dollar opportunities that we've been able to earmark toward early learning and early literacy efforts in this state, all through the partnership that we've had with MAG over the past decade, really leaning into data integration and analysis as the core tenets of Read On Arizona, and really having it drive our work at both the state level and community by community at the local level. And so I will pause there to see if there are any questions from any of the members.
Congrats to Goodyear on the great results. Any questions? We do, Jen.
Thank you. I am the black sheep of my family. Every single woman in my family is in education and spans all. So I chose a different career path, obviously. Really, really impressive results, particularly in that short time frame. What's our goal? Where do we want to be next?
So great. I'll go back to our shared priorities in the beginning. So the goal that we have set in terms of third grade reading is that by 2030, we want 72% of all third graders reading on grade level. By 2039, we want that to be at 90%. And that's because the research tells us that 95% of all students can be taught how to read. Whether that's, obviously if we have to scaffold or differentiate instruction, but 95% of all students can be taught to read. And so our goal is that we have 95% of all our students reading. And in terms of our early learning indicator, our goal is to have 45% of our 3 and 4-year-olds in high quality early learning settings by 2030. And currently we are sitting at 27%. So those are sort of our next sort of goal indicators, but we always put that line that shows the arrow that keeps on going because we don't want to stop once we get there. We want to keep moving that needle forward.
Wonderful. And an action item for all of us. 27% is not where we want to be.
It's not.
Remember looking around my home when my kiddo was 3 years old on the south side of Phoenix for quality options, and there were not enough. All right. Well, thank you.
Mayor,
Lori
if I could, I would just say, it's a great partnership between MAG and Read On. And I want to thank the regional council because you gave us the resources to have a regional analytics division that was available. I want to thank the regional analytics division for being available. And this is a great example of how we can leverage what you've helped create at MAG. Read On Arizona actually pays MAG to manage that tool for them. It saves them money because they don't have to hire people on staff and do things that's not their expertise. We can leverage our expertise for them. And so it's a great partnership here. And just would encourage you, if you and your community want to do more specifically, contact Lori. As you saw today, she's a great advocate for it. And Terry, who wasn't able to be here too, both of them, I know they're always very interested in talking with you and about your community going to happen. So thank you for allowing us today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lori and Peter. And congrats to everyone who used this data to get more money for their students. Item number 7 is Don't Trash Arizona Litter Prevention and Education Campaign. For information and discussion, we will welcome Kelly Taft, Communications Director, to kick us off.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the MAG Regional Council. I appreciate this opportunity to update you on some of the more recent and upcoming activities for Don't Trash Arizona, which is a litter prevention and education program that's implemented by MAG in coordination with ADOT. And the goal of our program is to make litter disappear. Don't Trash Arizona seeks to address a variety of impacts to our roadways, and that includes environmental, economic, health, and safety impacts of litter. Every weekday in the MAG region alone, there are nearly 400 bags of trash that are removed from the freeway system, which totals about 1.2 million pounds of litter every year. So I wanted to just talk briefly about the history of Don't Trash Arizona. Litter was first raised as a significant regional concern back in the development of the Regional Transportation Plan in 2003 by the TPC and the Regional Council. Later that same year, MAG and ADOT signed a joint resolution calling for the development of a long-term prevention and education campaign over litter. Funding for litter pickup, sweeping, landscape maintenance, and of course, the litter education was included in Proposition 400, which was approved by voters in 2004. That funding source is set to expire in 2025 in December. However, an extension of this funding is included in the new Prop 479. A litter working group that was formed examined litter programs across the country and determined that they would call the program Don't Trash Arizona, and it officially launched in 2006. The TPC and the Regional Council did require, however, that there would be an evaluative component of that campaign. So we do conduct an annual survey every year. In the last survey in November of 2023, saw the highest number of residents to date to label freeway litter as a big problem. The survey found that close to half of those who admitted to littering reported doing so while driving or riding in a vehicle. We do know that litterers are primarily single males, 18 to 34, and are therefore our primary target audience. However, we do know that that problem is much more widespread than those teenagers. Approximately 65% of residents have littered in the past year, with 45 classified as admitted litterers and 20% as accidental litterers when items fell or flew out of their vehicles. However, accidental is really kind of a misnomer since all litter is preventable. Road debris from unsecured loads is the most dangerous form of litter. In 2022 in Arizona, there were 1,100 debris-related crashes in our region, resulting in 9 deaths. From 2018 to 2022, more than 30 people in Arizona died in that 5-year period from unsecured loads. Recently, the region recognized Arizona Secure Your Load Day on June 6th in keeping with a national observance. We hosted a news conference in partnership with the agency you see listed on the slide, along with Paul Reeve, who is the father of 29-year-old Matthew, who was killed in a debris-related crash on June 6, 2006. Matthew's anniversary is actually the date that is recognized nationwide as Secure Your Load Day. I want to thank Mayor Osborne for participating in the news conference and representing MAG and Don't Trash Arizona so well. And we would like to play a just short video clip from the news conference with some of the key messages. It lasts just a little bit over a minute and a half. And during that press conference, we also had produced a demonstration video on how to properly secure your load, which is available on the don'ttrasharizona.com website. It was picked up by 22 media outlets with more than 400 million impressions. The news conference is just one example of the public relations component of the Don't Trash Arizona program. All of these photos are from the past year, with the exception of one that I had to sneak in Mayor Wires in the top right-hand corner from 2017 when he helped us work a drive-through window at Whataburger to distribute some litter bags. We also are excited to unveil our 2024 brand campaign. Goal is to increase awareness and communicate the value proposition that all of us share a desire for a clean and beautiful state. We do know that clean highways contribute to the beauty of this home that we all love. Because funding from the program does come from Prop 400, the dedicated half-cent sales tax for transportation, the campaign's conducted within Maricopa County. It will run from May to December and target adults. Success metrics will include impressions, click-through rate, social engagement, and survey results. Here's a preview of some of the billboards that we hope you'll be seeing around the valley very soon. The tagline is "Take the high road, keep Arizona amazing," and "Don't Trash Arizona." The creative was designed to showcase the attractiveness of our system, which is a shared regional value and one that we must protect. Here's what the creative looks like as part of the community train wrap on light rail. It's up and running now, so hopefully you will see this driving through your area soon as you travel through the region. These are just some of the social media posts we're doing some A/B testing on to determine what resonates best with our audiences. And I won't read through this, but this is the media plan. You can see that it includes paid social, broadcast radio, adopt a highway, and then out of home, which is the billboards and the train. So Madam Chair, members of the Regional Council, that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. And I think we'd welcome if our regional council members in Pinal wanted to participate.
Yes, ADOT does conduct the campaign for the balance of the state, and so they do include some messaging and some of their advertising efforts outside of the region.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous. It seems like it might also target whatever demographic I am.
24 to
Hopefully,
18 to
I'm glad to know that 18 to 34-year-old men like landscapes.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor Harkey.
I just had a question for Mayor Wires. Can I have a number one hold the tomato, please?
Say something, but I'm not.
Mayor, if I could, just a bit of history, because I was one of these people sitting here in the back row in 2003. This was actually had a little bit of, I won't say necessarily controversy, but had some conversation among the regional council about whether to include it in Prop 400. I think it turns out that it was a wise decision, but the conversation was really, is this something that we should spend local or regional sales tax dollars on when it is the responsibility of the state of Arizona and ADOT? And the decision was, well, we can stand on that principle and have really trashy highways because ADOT is not resourced appropriately to pick up litter, or we can take the opportunity as a regional council to invest money in this because they did some polling and cleaning up highways was really, really popular with, as Kelly noted in ongoing, is very popular with our residents. So it was that dialogue in 2003, 2004. Ultimately, they ended up deciding, let's put the money in to fund the pickup and fund the campaign to try to change hearts and minds. I think you see after 20 years, the result is one that I think the regional council hoped for back then, and continues today. And it is, as Kelly said, it is part of the Prop 479 that you all have approved and continued for the next 20 years, should the voters approve it.
Actually, I do have a serious question.
For a serious question, Mayor Harkey.
So I'm just curious. It seems like whenever I have complaints or questions from our citizens and it related to this, it kind of comes in waves. I could hear nothing for years, but then suddenly, I'm getting dozens of phone calls or emails. What's the consistency factor with this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Regional Council, and Mayor Harkey. I think some of the more recent concerns had to do with an issue in which an ADOT contractor had walked away from the job. And there was a time, and especially in the East Valley, when litter was not being picked up, as they had to go through a new procurement process to replace that contractor. So I think it really rose to the top again. It was a very significant issue, but it was a great demonstration of just what a great job we normally do in keeping our freeways clean, and how much litter quickly piled up when there wasn't a contractor picking it up. So it continues to be a big issue in terms of making sure that, it's such an easy preventative thing. You just don't toss things out your window, but it's really hard to get people to that behavior.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mayor Gallego, there's one other component of that, if I could add. And I learned this sitting on the State Transportation Board, that some of the resources that we use for snow removal and weather challenges, sometimes that means, August monsoon season, particularly in the northern part of the state. Those are the same resources that we would be using in some cases to pick up trash throughout the state. So we have to redirect those resources in order to ensure that we're taking care of the immediate and more urgent need. Not that trash is not an urgent need, but just that if it's the same resources, we have to reallocate that personnel. So there is sometimes in the winter, if we've had a lot of snowfall, you'll see less trash being picked up and vice versa. So there is some seasonality also to that effort.
Meaning it is the same workforce.
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. Item 8 is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. Our member agencies have done a great job leveraging funds, including from the Regional Transportation Plan, to deliver our fair share of federal dollars. Patrick Stone, Deputy Transportation Director, will tell us how we've been doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Regional Council. I will apologize in advance. This is going to be one of the most acronym-heavy presentations you get to see. Whenever you talk about federal funding, you are heavy into the acronym space. But we are now halfway through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, a couple of years into the Inflation Reduction Act. So a good time to have a reflection on how those investments have benefited the region. So first, starting with the IIJA, signed into law back in November of 2021. It was a 5-year transportation bill, the single largest transportation bill in the nation's history. You can see the numbers on the right of the screen, $350 billion nationally for highway projects and programs, $91 billion in the transit space. I do like using the slide, the Sankey diagram. I think you're all familiar with this as part of the development of the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, or RSTIP. And what you really note here is the revenue streams on the left. Of particular note, there are the 3 revenue streams that are federally funded, both the FTA funds that come to the region, as well as the federal highway funds that go both through ADOT and directly to the MAG region. And point of emphasis, over 40% of the revenues in that plan are from federal resources. So how do these funds get into the region? First, looking at Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, there are really 2 paths that these funds flow into the region. First, through ADOT as part of the Freeway Lifecycle Program, and also as part of statewide competitive programs. These are programs that are administered by the state, the Department of Transportation, that MAG member agencies participate in. In addition, we also have those funds that flow directly to the region that are then programmed and allocated through the RSTIP. So going into the numbers a little bit, if we look at the Freeway Lifecycle Program, those funds flowing directly through ADOT, as part of IIJA, you are looking at $77 million a year increase, which is $385 million over the life of the IIJA. For those statewide competitive programs, which focus specifically on safety projects and bridge projects, an additional $16 million per year, $80 million over the life of the IIJA. And then in addition, those that go into the RSTIP, another $28 million per year, or 140, a significant amount of funding invested into the region as a result of IIJA. So what do those funds do? If we look at it from the Freeway Lifecycle Program, those funds allowed us to begin development work on projects associated with Phase 1 of Prop 479. Through this council's action, we were able to begin development on projects that are critical to that. For the statewide, and I think this is a good one, we've talked about this. This was part of some conversations earlier this month. 10 agencies in the region received over $40 million in safety funding through the state of Arizona. And then finally, as far as the RSTIP, we were able to help member agencies offset increasing costs. As you are all well aware, over the last few years, we've seen extraordinary increases in the construction space. These additional funds allowed MAG to be able to partner with member agencies to offset those costs and protect those local budgets. I like this map. It kind of shows where these investments and some of those things we've talked about occur. First, we have the 2 new TIs planned for I-10, both at Baseline Road and Jackrabbit Trail. The funding from IIJA has allowed us to begin that development work. In addition, as one of the Prop 479 Phase 1 projects, we've begun development work on final design for State Route 24, which is the additional lane and the grade separated traffic interchanges. Moving to the West Valley, we have State Route 30, the center segment, specifically the first 2 sections on the east are under design right now. Apologize. There we go. 101 Agua Fria, 75th Avenue to I-17, additional widening project benefited from IIJA. We have down in the Southeast Valley, the 202 Santan from Val Vista to the 101, again, a widening project that benefited. In addition, this one I wanted to note, this project not only benefits from IIJA, we've been able to advance this project. So it was originally planned to go in 2026. We'll be able to advance that to 2024. Similarly, in the West Valley, the extension of State Route 303 from Van Buren down to MC 85, another project we've been able to advance as a result of IIJA, moving up 2 years again from 2027 to 2025. Moving on to the transit space, the FTA formula funding. This is obviously always a tricky slide to explain. When IIJA was passed, this was prior to the census being approved. We had two old urban areas, Phoenix Mesa, Scottsdale, and we had the Avondale Goodyear urbanized area. I've reflected on the screen the new naming conventions and the funds associated with both of those urban areas. But you see the Phoenix Mesa Scottsdale urban area gets an additional 26 million a year. And then the Phoenix West Goodyear Avondale urban area gets another 4 million. In addition, we have a new urban area in the city of Maricopa getting just under 2 million a year starting in 2024. A hallmark of the IIJA, it wasn't just those increased formula investments. We also saw a lot of activity for discretionary grants, not only continuing existing grants that member agencies have been very successful with, but we also saw new grant programs as part of this bill. You see the listing on the right of those types of grants member agencies have gotten, including the charging and fuel infrastructure, infra, the LONO, RAISE, SS4A, the SMART grant, it goes on. And how did those grants benefit the region? I think the map does a very good job. First, the city of Mesa got a charging and fuel infrastructure grant for a mobility hub. So they've got that one. Pause here. This was an infra grant. The state of Arizona, ADOT received an infra grant, $95 million. It's the investments this region made that helped make this grant happen. One component always of grants is where do the non-federal funding sources come? The regional commitment through Prop 400 and moving into Prop 479 allowed the state to put a very competitive grant application that was ultimately awarded. So we have the widening of I-10. We also have a Safe Streets for All project for the city of Phoenix, the revisioning Indian School project between Grand Avenue and 91st Avenue, a needed safety improvement for the city. An active transportation project for the state of Phoenix, the 3rd Street pedestrian bridge over Rio Salado, which was a RAISE grant the city was awarded. For the LONO, this is for allowing member agencies to pursue low and no emission transit vehicles. The Valley Metro was able to get a grant to start transitioning to a zero emission fleet, as well as the city of Phoenix also got a LONO grant in the same space. And then finally, and I really like this one, you see as the dots pop up, these are the Safe Streets for All planning grants. 8 member agencies have been able to receive grant funding for these types of projects. So moving on to the Inflation Reduction Act and the impacts of the IRA. Really, the intent of the legislation is a threefold. If you read the legislation, it was to grow the American economy, protect and secure our energy future, and also combat climate change. So I kind of wanted to highlight where there have been specific instances where the IRA has had that nexus with the region. First, as well, you're aware this came through earlier last year, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. This allowed MAG to get a $1 million grant to start developing a climate pollution plan. That plan was a critical component to allow member agencies to then pursue implementation grants being made available by EPA. In addition, the IRA invested over $7 billion nationally for energy and solar, 156 million of that awarded to the governor's office to be used statewide to help install a rooftop solar and to put in more charging infrastructure. In addition, 2 nonprofits were each received $250 million. These are multi-state projects, so some emphasis to the state of Arizona, but they allowed them to help provide financing for individuals to start being able to engage in the solar space. And then finally, urban and community forestry. I thought this was an interesting one as I had this one come across my plate. $1 billion nationally, but when you see what it's used for, it really makes a lot of sense. So 4 cities in the region, Chandler, Mesa, Peoria, and Phoenix, I received over $12 million for tree planting and maintenance and to help combat the effects of heat in the region. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Very timely with our incoming chair's focus on safety, that 8 member agencies got those safety grants. Well, be a good chance to save lives. Anyone want to brag about a favorite project? Any questions? Do we have any online? Well, it looks like our region has done very well, and the regional transportation plan has given us a funding source to be more competitive. So very, very exciting. Thank you for that great presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
Number 9, Executive Director's Report. I will turn it over to Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first start this and ask Matt Poppin to come up and give a brief air quality update on something that's pretty timely to many of our regional members. It has to do with particulate matter less than 2.5. It's the very, very, very small stuff. We've talked about this a bit. And so Matt will just walk you through the current status of designating a PM 2.5 non-attainment area.
Yeah,
Matt?
thank you, Ed, and members of the Regional Council. Just last week, ADEQ has released their draft non-attainment area boundaries for the new annual PM 2.5 standard. So the map on the left is the boundary for the Maricopa County non-attainment area, and then the map on the right is for Pinal County. Within those maps, the red dots represent monitors that are violating the standard currently, and blue dots represent monitors that are attaining the standard. ADEQ is currently soliciting informal feedback on these draft boundaries from stakeholders, including MAG member agencies. And these boundaries are subject to change based upon feedback received. And even today, MAG is hosting a meeting at 2:30 where ADEQ will explain to MAG member agencies within the proposed boundaries the process ADEQ went through to establish these boundaries. ADEQ is also going to be giving that same presentation to our Air Committee tomorrow as well. So there'll be lots of opportunities for member agencies to comment and provide recommendations back to ADEQ. ADEQ anticipates having a formal comment period that will be held in September, October. And then ADEQ must provide the governor with boundary recommendations by January 7th, 2025. And then the governor must submit those to the EPA by February 7th, 2025. EPA will then designate these officially a year later in February 7th, 2026. So MAG staff has been working with our on-call consultants to analyze the PM 2.5 monitoring data. We will be reviewing these boundary recommendations and the data used to support the recommendations. So there'll be lots of opportunities for us to comment, have additional conversations on these, understand the methodology behind it, and respond back to ADEQ. And my gut is these will likely change based on feedback received, but this is a starting point that ADEQ is starting with.
So if you remember, EPA recently lowered the standard for PM 2.5, which brought our region into non-compliance. This is the boundary that DEQ is starting with to receive public comment about that. Matt, would you take just a second and explain why would, say, Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, Surprise, Avondale, Mesa be included in this area, given how the monitors look? What's happening where DEQ is saying that they're part of the PM 2.5 issue?
Right. So there are 5 factors that go into determining how you draw these boundaries. So you have air quality monitoring data, emissions data, meteorology, geography, topography, and then just jurisdictional boundaries. But really, I would say what the main driver is in a lot of these is we know residential wood smoke is really the highest contributor to PM 2.5 in the wintertime here. And that really drives our annual average. And so what ends up happening is that residential wood smoke from kind of this larger area gets funneled down into that Salt River airshed, and it kind of sits there overnights. And that's what's sort of causing those monitors to exceed. The air just kind of all follows that airshed down into the lower Salt River Valley there. So ADEQ has preliminarily looked at areas where emissions are occurring in these airshed boundaries. So for example, that sort of southeast valley is in a different airshed. That air doesn't really flow towards the Salt River because of the Salt River Mountains. It's flowing a different way. So I think that's why ADQ preliminarily has excluded the southeast valley, whereas sort of the northwest valley, the central, that air kind of all flows down in the wintertime into that Salt River Valley. That's just one factor. There are several other factors. I think, again, these are subject to change. And I think, more analysis is needed to really refine these, but this is a starting point and all comments are welcome.
So PM 2.5 is a little different from PM 10. If you remember our PM 10 strategies years ago, we're often just very specific, like, let's go talk to that farmer about not plowing his field today because that dust is going to make the monitor violate. It's different with PM 2.5, as I've learned from Matt, because it's so small and it lingers in it and it gravitates through those air sheds down to the lower part of the valley. So it's coming from everywhere and collecting there most. So that's why DEQ, I think, it started with a much broader boundary geography to take feedback on.
And I would just say really briefly for Pinal County, that's the same boundary that currently exists for the 24-hour PM 2.5 standard. So there's no change there at all. They're just keeping that same boundary in Pinal County for the new annual standard.
Also, if you're wondering, our Native Nation members are sovereign in this regard, and the state of Arizona does have authority to include them in the boundaries. I think that is a decision at the federal government level, which is why you see the carve out for Gila River Indian Community and Salt River Pima Maricopa, because the governor of Arizona does not have the authority to include them in boundaries the way she does with non-tribal land. So that's why that exists that way. That's done through a separate national process. Any questions on that? We're happy to talk more individually. Your staff is coming, as Matt said, to get a really defined briefing and to talk to DEQ.
Yeah. We'll start with Mayor Hartke and then go to Mayor Osborne.
Yeah, to me, it was looking at the Maricopa map. It's just, I think we just refer to us as the region. So this is a bit counterintuitive. So thank you for your explanation of the airflow, whatever, of the Southeast Valley. Do you, and again, I don't speculate if you can't, but do you anticipate that how this region might change, and what are the implications for those inside the region and outside?
Yeah, I think in terms of the boundaries, I think it's particularly right now, I think the north and west boundaries are a little bit arbitrary. It's kind of a township and range boundary. So I think there's more room to look maybe deeper at the particular emission sources that are occurring there and really try and figure out what makes sense to include. So I could see some changes on the north and west side. Also, as we get more detailed information about the specific location of sources and how the meteorology moves those emissions, I could see some changes occurring there. What it means for businesses, it will be a moderate non-attainment area. So we'll start out, we'll have 6 years to put together a plan with measures that will show how we will meet this new standard within 6 years. So roughly around 2032. But I do think primarily a lot of the measures will not be focused on particular businesses, because we do know this is more of a widespread issue. Things like residential wood burning, fireworks are kind of the things that are really kind of pushing us over. So it'll be more of not really industry specific or business specific. It'll be a little bit broader, would be my guess at this point. But we'll have to dig into it further to get really down to the specific measures that will ultimately come. But those are some of the things that we can start to see as this planning process progresses.
So South Tempe, Chandler, Queen Creek, Ahwatukee, we don't get a break by not being in this. It's just not the focus area at this point.
Well, no, I mean, you wouldn't be subject to, so for example, if there was a large industry that would happen to emit, a lot, you wouldn't have to, they wouldn't have the same permitting requirements as if you were to locate inside the non-attainment area. So there are some benefits to being outside of it from a large major source industry perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Osborne.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you may have answered my question in what other sources there are. Sounds like wood burning and fireworks. And can you maybe go a little bit further in that? And then also were in non-attainment. I think I understood because EPA had lowered the threshold. What was the threshold previously, and what are the differences there?
Right. So the prior standard was 12 on an annual basis, so averaged out over the entire year. That new standard is 9. So it's a pretty significant stringency bump up. The monitors that are in red are roughly just above 10. So we've got another microgram we have to reduce at those monitors to get those in compliance. In terms of the sources, the other sources of PM 2.5, I think we've mentioned before, any activity that disturbs the soil, similar with PM 10 with dust, can cause PM 2.5, and then any combustion activity. So you do get PM 2.5 from vehicle exhaust, from industrial facilities that have boilers and engines. All of those produce PM 2.5 as well. PM 2.5 can be formed secondarily in the atmosphere too. So chemicals such as VOCs and NOx can, kind of similar to ozone, can kind of form together to form PM 2.5. So there's some secondary effects as well. But the primary sources for us tend to be wood burning in the winter in particular. And then we have those fugitive dust sources, anything that disturbs the soils, and then exhaust sources. And then wildfires too in the summer also contribute as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So with that, your staff is going to be engaged fully. We just wanted you to be aware of this, as it's going to be a conversation in the next while related to the boundaries of this. Moving on, Mayor, as we all know, it's hot in Arizona, and it's hot this summer so far. And so just a reminder that we have the heat relief toolkit available, and to bring your attention to that, that includes social media, graphics, print material, news stories, links. It's all available on our website for you and your staff to use. Also on the Maricopa County website as well. Next, good news in terms of the efforts on homelessness is we learned earlier this month that we received a $1.7 million award from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, specifically for youth homelessness, a system improvement grant. And it will support targeted efforts that have been adopted by this body in youth homelessness prevention by using data analysis, system modeling, capacity building with our nonprofit partners, and coordinating statewide. Our Brian Gruters and our team are the ones who are working on this. And so this is new resources to the region for the specific issue of youth homelessness. Next, our member agency, Maricopa County and McDOT, received $20 million to deploy what they call a vehicle to everything, or V2X is their acronym, to provide connectivity between vehicles and infrastructure and non-motorized users. Others, it's a wide-ranging effort that's going to involve Maricopa County, MAG, and ADOT, and it's part of a safety program. So that's a big bunch of resources. You see, County Supervisor Chairman Sellers was part of receiving those funds. Next for you, this is the end of our fiscal year. As you all know, in your council meetings, it's the same for us. There's an annual report available titled Ready to Roll. Talks about what's gone on at Regional Council to prepare for the new infrastructure investments that are coming up, the year in review, and also our fiscal and funding information. It's available on the MAG website. And finally, speaking of infrastructure investment, again, want to thank you for your continued educational efforts for your specific residents in your communities about what's in Prop 479 for your residents. We've talked previously about cities and their efforts. A couple more examples just to stimulate things. Buckeye, Chandler, Goodyear, and Peoria have recently added pages. Specifically in Chandler, they really focused on what is being done in Chandler. Peoria is an example of just including a link back to the MAG webpage. So it can be as simple as that, or more complicated, or more involved as you see it. So also Buckeye and Goodyear part of this effort as well. And we learned just this morning that Mesa, Tempe, and Valley Metro received a raised grant of $16 million for their streetcar extension project. Congratulations, Mayor Woods, Mayor Giles, Valley Metro, and the East Valley for that. They're very, very, very competitive grants, only 2 generally per state. And so for Tempe Mesa Valley Metro to get one is a high vote of confidence by the FTA in that streetcar project. It is part of the Prop 479 RSTIP. I'm sorry, it's part of the RSTIP investment plan. Is supported by funding from the region. It was specifically excluded from 479. And with that, I think we'll turn to I would say on behalf of MAG staff, Mayor Gallego, thank you for your service this year. I know we'll move to that part of the program next, but on our behalf, thank you for your service.
Wonderful. Much appreciated, but we will not move to that part before we hear our legislative update. We have questions.
I actually had a question. If they could go back that slideshow you just had at the very beginning, I was curious why they were calling it youth from 18 to 24. That was the only thing I couldn't understand.
Yeah, I think that's the specific term that HUD has, and I'll ask Brian to answer that question. How is that designation arrived at, Brian?
Chair and Mayor Wires. So it's an industry term. Transition aged youth is typically the kind of the full expression. So it's anybody from 18 to 24. If you were to go younger than 18, that would be minor. So in this case, it's specific dealing with folks who are 18 to 24, and HUD designates that group transition aged youth. So these are folks typically who are coming out of the foster care system and are kind of set back for that reason. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So now we will go to the legislative update. Mayor Osborne tried to do a good news only update at the Transportation Policy Committee. Since he got all the good news, we'll take the bad.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gallego, members of Regional Council. As you all know by now, the legislature passed a $16.1 billion budget and adjourned for the year back on June 15th. Much of the focus of our work in monitoring activity down at the legislature has been transportation related this year, including the agency continuation of our implementing partner, the Arizona Department of Transportation. I'm pleased to report as part of final actions of session, House Bill 2438 was amended and passed, approving an 8-year extension of our partner agency, ADOT. Amongst other things we have been monitoring and tracking was how the legislature was going to deal with a significant budget deficit, including any implications to previously awarded and appropriated infrastructure funding, not just here in our region, but of course, statewide. However, as part of the final budget, ultimately there were results that impact funding and deferrals of several transportation projects in our region, including the following: reducing funding for statewide pavement preservation efforts by $29 million, removing the $9.2 million appropriation for the design of the West Pinnell Parkway East-West Corridor, reducing the funding appropriated to State Route 24 extension in Pinell County by $28 million, removing construction funding for the I-10 expansion project between Citrus and 85 in the West Valley that was slated to begin construction in fiscal year 25, with legislative intent now to restore that funding in fiscal years 2027 and 2028, and removing $49 million in construction funding for the SR 347 Riggs Road overpass project, with also legislative intent to restore in fiscal year 2028. There were a few supplemental appropriations to a few other projects with shortfalls, including adding $1.9 million for the SR 347 Casablanca Cement Plant Interchange project, as well as adding $167,000 to the US 6303 Interim Improvement project, for which was featured at TPC recently. We continue to evaluate all aspects of the budget package itself and will report any additional implications as we identify them. With that, Chair Gallego, that completes my report.
Thank you. Questions, comments? For those of you who are online, the sense was where at least they adjourned. All right, we will move on to number 11, the election of the regional council officers and executive committee. This is on the agenda for approval. The nominating committee recommended the following slate of candidates: Chair, Mayor Kevin Harkey of the City of Chandler; Vice Chair, Mayor Enricio, City of El Mirage; Treasurer, Mayor Osborne, City of Buckeye; 3 at-large members: Mayor Peterson Gilbert, Mayor Giles Mesa, Mayor Wires Glendale; past Chair Kate Gallego Phoenix. Prior to voting, there is an opportunity for the members of the public to comment. I believe we have no comments. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the regional council officers and executive committee members? Mayor Woods. Mayor Pizzillo, second. All those in favor? Oh, everyone turn on your camera. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right. Can we do a roll call?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I call your name, please unmute, indicate how you vote. Mayor Schoaf.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Smith. Mayor Smith. Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion passes.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mayor Smith, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you to Mayor Weiss for leading our nominating committee. Congratulations to all of the new officers. And on my behalf, thank you to all the regional council members for working with me in such an important year, to the InterGovs, to MAG staff. Thank you for all the support. We got so much done. With the great leadership that came before us, we were able to get Prop 400 extension through the legislature. It was wonderful to join so many of you when Governor Hobbs signed it, and now we have sent it to the voters for them to tell us whether they do up or down. A yes vote would extend the tax until 2045 and allow us to implement the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan. Incredible testament to the folks on this body. We approved it unanimously. When people always ask me, how's government working? This is the success story I offer, that we have such different needs in the people who are represented and communities represented at this body, but we came together to find something that would move the ball forward for all of us. If the voters give the thumbs down, it would discontinue the tax. We would have to wind down many investments, including regional bus service. The transportation plan that underpins Prop 479 is a multimodal plan that would mean addition of critical freeway linkages throughout our region. Since I'm sitting next to Mayor Osborne, I'll mention State Route 30. For us in the city of Phoenix, investments in I-17 are so desperately needed, including modernizing it so that it can be safer and faster. This is a investment that would nearly double funding to expand transit, including bus, high capacity, and ADA paratransit, the dial-a-ride that lets so many of our residents age in place and stay connected to their communities. We'd have more than 1,000 miles of newer improved arterial systems. It would help us support safety, innovation, intelligent transportation systems, bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Mayor Hartke and I often always talk about that innovation pot of money, but we all know if we're going to stay the innovative region, we need to have funding sources to do this work. While we have moved the plan forward to the voters, MAG continues to work to make sure we are ready to implement the plan if it is funded. It will move the region forward. When I think about what is different between our region and some others, it's that we've invested in infrastructure, and that has brought opportunity for our residents, as well as helped us with economic development and safer communities. We've done great work outside of that plan on transportation. I want to thank colleagues who helped present, whether it be Mayor Hartke on automation, or Mayor Orsborn on electric vehicles with Mayor Giles and Mayor Wheelie. We really are leading in so many different areas, and I hope this year was a time to celebrate that and to underpin forward motion in those areas. I suppose since air quality is on the screen, I shall mention the important work we have done in that area. We were working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which will help with many of the other criteria pollutants. Probably the biggest focus was on ozone, and we worked together with other levels of government to come up with a plan and to share with the EPA what was happening in our region, some of the challenges we face with emissions from wildfires outside of our state, from overseas, and so much more. Our work was very helpful to our U.S. senators in the work that they did in that area, and also led to a personal visit by EPA Administrator Joe Goffman. So we look forward to working with the EPA on these issues. We talked about the economic impacts as well as health in this area. We also continued to move forward on homelessness, and thank you to Mayor Wires for being one of our presenters in that area. We released numbers in the point in time count and had we got more work to do, but some positive news, including ticking down in the point in time count overall, and then a much higher percent of individuals sheltered, which we know is safer than living on the right of way in city streets. But we still have a lot more work to do in this area. We are trying to step up in Phoenix with 83% of the new beds since COVID, but we would really love help in that area very much, and took a forward step today. We're also doing more work on data collection, which is very important, and then communicating through our public education campaign about how important it is to change the narrative around affordability, and to make sure we have policies that put homes within the reach of every Arizonan. One of the things that I hope that made a difference during my time here was our focus on heat, which was something that was a real priority for me. It is crushing to hear the numbers of how many people passed away last summer due to heat-related causes, and I hope to use my time here to have real discussions about what we are doing and what we still need to do. We're putting smarter policies in place, and I hope that will save lives. It is very much my goal that this summer we will reverse that trend of more and more people being lost, and save lives through the work that we are doing here. So if there's one thing I would most want people to take away from my time here, would be that focus on heat and just the work we can do to make sure that people know the resources we have. So whether it's electricity outage at your home, or that you don't have a safe place at home, that there's now shade, water, cooling centers that we are offering as a region. So we've been doing incredible work as a region, and it's a pleasure to share it with all of you. We have so many great leaders in this community, and I'm so glad we work together as a region. I next get to turn it over to one of those who's led in so many things, not just nationally, but internationally, and who will do an incredible job with the challenges and opportunities we face. The whole world is watching us, and whether it be infrastructure or innovation, we're going to continue to move forward. So I would like to formally pass the gavel to Chandler Mayor Kevin Hartke.
Well, thank you. I suppose I could just gavel out now, but let me share a few words as well. I do want to thank you, Mayor Kate, for your outstanding leadership. It's been a lot of issues that continue to come and at us, and I'm appreciative of you and each of us on this board. Even just last week, 6 of us were working together at the U.S. Conference of Mayors and representing the region in a variety of things, and it was very good to see the region coming together. So usually when the lights are flashing, it is time to shut it down. So thank you for that subliminal messaging there. So Mayor Kate, I would like to just present you with this award on behalf of MATE. of MAG in appreciation for your dedicated service as chair of Maricopa Association of Governments from the Regional Council 2023 to 2024. We appreciate you and your leadership. As Mayor Gallego outlined, this year ahead is going to continue to bring a lot of opportunities for us to work together and looking to work together specifically in transportation progress in our region. So I'm grateful for the honor and trust that you all have put in me to have a role in leadership in continuing to move our county ahead and continuing to move our transportation system ahead. My priority will be to ensure that MAG has our toes at the starting blocks with this transportation funding being approved, that we'll be ready to move forward with the implementation of the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan. Well, I'm not even going to try to acronym that one. It is. Obviously, Regional is developed with the input of MAG's 32 member agencies, from large cities like Phoenix out to Wickenburg, Apache Junction's Cave Creek, and the Gila River Indian community. This plan was unanimously approved, and to add more capacity and reduce strain on our transportation system. The second word, strategic, is, as Mayor Gallego mentioned, we want to look ahead with what we're doing. We want to be smart with what we're doing. We want to take into account that people have different ways of transporting, as DB comes and reminds us at each of our meetings here. The third word is transportation, and Mayor Gallego has already outlined many of these improvements ahead for us, but I will continue to look at our regional focus and looking at the alarming statistics that show that our region has very dangerous streets and is dangerous for pedestrians and other vulnerable road users. So we look forward to continuing to move ahead with this. The next two words, infrastructure investment, means that it's vital, not just for building, protecting and maintaining our physical facilities, such as roads and bridges, but also continuing to foster the economic growth, enhancing competitiveness, and improving quality of life across our system. And then finally, plan. That's what we do as mayors, as leaders in this room. We're planners, and we have a fine group of planners that together we will not only get ahead of this, but continue to ensure that our valley is in good shape for our stay as well as for decades ahead. So in addition to transportation, we'll continue to have a continued focus on air quality, as mentioned, ozone with these increased standards now in place, as we will be moving up into serious non-attainment. MAG has been at the forefront in working with the EPA, and I appreciate all of those in this room that have had these deep dive discussions. We are not alone, and we need to continue to stand with other Western cities that also are struggling to also figure out how to make things work with the changing of attainment areas. We will continue our critical air planning and modeling work to develop and submit a plan that meets EPA standards, at the same time working with them all the time to see what else is available to us. In the next couple months, we will join with our regional and state partners to prevent heat-related deaths. And I appreciate, again, your passion and focus on heat stations, and as well as just those who are most vulnerable on the streets. The interactive map hosted by MAG provides links to hundreds of locations where people can find shade, shelter, and indoor cooling stations, or where to donate supplies. We've got much work to do here to address homelessness, and I am glad that we tackled this as a community project. As we all know, our borders are porous, and people are looking for help regardless of where they live. These are just a few of the reasons that we sit around the single united table every month to make policy decisions that make our region a great place to be. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you to make sure we stay on target with our commitments that serve the greater region, and also that we just don't take on or duplicate services that are available elsewhere. And to our current and future audiences, you will continue to be treated with respect and assurance that your voice is being heard. So I am eager to continue our work to realize that this united purpose to further the prosperity and quality of life for our current and future residents under our watch will continue. So thank you all. So is there a request for future agenda items? Seeing none. Any comments from the committee? All right. Well, thank you all. With that, let's adjourn this meeting.